If you've been watching for a while, then you might know that my pedal board for roughly the past year has been one of, if not the biggest model on the market made by Rockboard. Well, a little while back, I decided to downsize from that ridiculously colossal beast, and I just wasn't able to settle on a model. So an industry friend of mine, who just so happens to have recently taken up a job at Diodario, told me, why don't you go for one of the Diodario Expand boards, which is a series of differently sized pedal boards that can each, you guessed it, expand to around twice the original size. And my immediate answer to that proposal was, no thank you. And my prejudice against these boards is what inadvertently led to this video. We kept talking for a little while, and eventually this friend of mine forwarded me to his colleague who would be responsible for actually sending me things if I was interested, and I told that colleague my exact thoughts on the Expand boards from the point of view of someone who had never actually tried one. And so I'll just read to you exactly what I sent to this guy at Diodario. I've recently decided to downsize my pedal board from the biggest available on the market to something that just fits the pedals I use at any given time, and Gabriel suggested the Expand 2 board. I'd heard of these boards before, but was always skeptical because, to me, a board that has moving, expandable parts doesn't scream, please stomp on me. So I thought, since I'm known on YouTube for being a very honest and unbiased reviewer, it would be fun if you wanted to send out one of those boards to me to put through its paces in an honest video and maybe prove my theory wrong. If it worked out in the board's favor, it would become my daily driver. We then moved to email, and I basically said the exact same thing again. I reached out to you on LinkedIn about getting one of the Expand 2 pedal boards for an unbiased review, in which I honestly expressed the thoughts I had before ever trying one, and then my experience after spending a week or so with it. And a couple of days later, guess what showed up at my door? I 100% stand by my initial thoughts on these pedal boards. Anything with a bunch of moving, slidey parts doesn't inspire confidence when the objective is to constantly be stepping on it. And now, I know a pedal board isn't meant to withstand being jumped onto with both feet with one's entire body weight, and I don't intend to make that part of this stress test, but I do think that, in a pinch, a decent pedal board should be able to withstand this and not break. And so what inspired confidence already was that even after reading my messages and emails in which I detailed that I would be tearing this thing to shreds publicly if it wasn't up to my standards, Diodario couldn't have been quicker to send it my way. But ever since that whole Aero guitar debacle, it's become clear to me that a company's willingness to send out a product is not in itself a sign of good quality. So let's wait and see. What you get in the box is a disassembled pedal board, the means to assemble it, and a length of coarse Velcro for the underside of your pedals to go with the soft Velcro that's pre-installed on the board. So here's some time-lapsed assembly footage overlaid with music because I had Kitchen Nightmares on in the background. Also, subscribe, why don't you? What do you have to lose? First, notes during assembly. So the way that this thing expands is you open up this latch here, and then obviously it expands out. And so the way that it keeps it from just randomly doing that is the latch pushes up this little plastic knob thing in the back. The little knob fell out during assembly, and that is technically no problem. I'm sure I can, I can unscrew this right here. And so once that's unscrewed, I can pop it back in, screw it back in, and it's fixed. This was a minor bump, since popping that shard of injection mold plastic back into place took all of 25 seconds, but I'd be remiss to keep it from you nevertheless. The remaining assembly went quite smoothly. And I was left with an absolute hunk of a pedal board that weighed almost as much as my old one, despite being nowhere near as big. And now, I'd of course attribute this to the fact that there are effectively two pedal boards within the volume of one, but just a big heavy hunk of steel sort of already gives you that psychological illusion of build quality, so I'm all for it. But I was definitely more optimistic now than before unboxing it. Since it came with soft Velcro pre-installed on the board, I had to tear all the old soft Velcro off my pedals and install the coarse stuff that came with it, and then I got to assembling my essentials-only board. It still doesn't look all that essentials-only, but if you didn't know my old board, it was everything that's on here, plus what's on these two shelves. So this is very, very bare bones in comparison. My reasoning for downsizing is that while I do love all of my pedals and have a use for every single one, more often than not it's going to be the same 3 or 4 effects being used at a time plus a noise gate, making the other ones essentially a waste of space. So I think my approach for the expand board, if it stands the test of time that is to constantly have this be a closed circuit and reserve the second half of the board for an entirely separate pedal rig, so I can expand to a second setup at will, but always have my core tones on the main board, as opposed to having like 30 pedals on one aircraft carrier of a pedal board without a switcher and only ever using like the same 3 or 4 at a time. And so begins the stomping. Over the course of the following week, I vigorously put this board to the test, playing more guitar in that 1 week than I had in the 2 or 3 months before it. And while I wasn't trying to damage the pedal board, because you are generally supposed to treat your things with care even if they are built well, and also this is a test of whether it withstands normal usage, not how much it can withstand until it breaks, I also didn't intentionally go easy on it. And while, as I already mentioned, my main rig is constantly on the right side of this board, which isn't the side of the board that I was worried about not being stable enough, I obviously had to keep the board expanded throughout the entire test and mainly use that side of it, so I kept the $10 pedal rig from the last video on it and used that. And I stomped. And stomped. And stomped. And it did not even move. No matter how much I stepped on it, it would not budge, and so my bias against it faded slowly. And while I was of course happy to see this because A, it meant that I had the new pedal board that I wanted and the surge was over, and B, I didn't have to burn yet another brand relationship to the ground just by being honest about a product, which has been happening a lot, I was also surprised that I was able to be this wrong about it in the first place. So, was I wrong about these pedal boards? Certainly, by quite the margin. Am I upset that I was wrong? Not even a little bit. Because, contrary to popular belief, I don't enjoy shitting on things. I do it quite a bit, but only when necessary. And so I'll gladly admit that I was wrong about this board, and also that I appreciate Diodario's willingness to send it out, even though they were more than aware that I was going to rip it to shreds if I didn't like it. Most companies wouldn't have taken that risk, and most companies don't take these kinds of risks. And that leads to me turning down proposals from brands constantly, and that is usually a sign that somebody isn't confident in their product. So what about design flaws? Well, one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of personally is the actual locking mechanism to keep that second half inside unless you want to pull it out, because that little nugget of white plastic that you saw fall out during the assembly is really all that's keeping the second half in check. So I am very capable of just pulling the board out in its locked state. But don't get me wrong, I did have to use force for that. It's not going to slip out or anything, and also pedal boards aren't usually stored like this. They will be on the ground like this, in which case that is even less of a problem. But yeah, it's not slipping out of there or anything. And just a tiny little bit of criticism is that at this price point, they could have included some sort of cable ties. Now that minor little thing, but I did have to go to the store and get cable ties because I didn't have any. And I do like at least somewhat organizing the cables at the bottom of the board, and yes, this is organized to me. But besides that, I was wrong about this board in almost every way imaginable, and I'm very, very glad that Diodario was willing to prove me wrong, and I do intend to kind of make this a series and maybe use this video to reach out to other companies whose products I'm skeptical about, but willing to try and be proven wrong in a video. So now, what do you say we take a quick look into my sitting room, because a lad's gotta eat. This video has been brought to you by Valencia Theatre Seating. Valencia were kind enough to send 2 of their handmade Tuscany theatre seats out for me to use and show to you. These seats are the pinnacle of comfort and luxury, and I am very, very lucky to have been chosen for this sponsorship, because I use them every single day. I was originally a little put off by the proposal, but then I thought about it some more, and regardless of special interest, what we all have in common is that every now and again, we like to take a seat. And if you do like to take a seat, then these are your best bet. The Tuscany reclines fully, has unparalleled adjustability both in the lumbar and headrest area, and so many more features. Every seat has a USB and a USB-C output for charging your devices, adjustable floor lights as well as LEDs in the cup holders. They can save your favorite seating position like a Mercedes, and they have incredible storage space with actuators on the lids for added luxury. Oh, what's this in here? Oh, just the attachable Valencia iPad holder and carbon fiber tray table, optional to purchase alongside your seats. So if you're a connoisseur of superior comfort and luxury, go through the link in the description and get your Valencia theater seating Tuscany today. Thank you for watching. If you want one of these boards or really anything else, my Thomann and Sweetwater affiliate links are in the pinned comment and in the video description. Most recent video, subscribe and leave a comment, hit the bell, and I will see you around.